thinking your friends seem a little off upstairs? Wondering if acting out is a mental health challenge? Pause. Think about it with intentional thought and consider where we go from here. Stay tuned and hear what Dr. Petra Forbes got to say about how perceived behavior is hampering our potential.
Something to think about with Dale Happy Knowles. What we think, we become. What we radiate, we attract. What we imagine, we surely can achieve. Let's change the narrative 242.
Welcome to Something to Think About with Dale Happy Knowles. Join our co-sponsors, DomDev Enterprises and Paget Investments, and our friends at Something to Think About. Join in with the conversation that we're going to have today with the doctor is in the house, Dr. Petra Forbes. Welcome, Doc. Could you hear me?
Thank you for having me, Happy.
You're quite welcome.
Be here. Always happy to talk about mental health.
Awesome. And we're going to talk about some things that I think people might not always hear. And might be interested in finding and how it could help them along the way. So let's talk a little bit about you, because I know if I look at this resume, we'll be talking the whole show just about you and your accomplishments, because in your short space of life, you sure trying to write a Bible, I guess, because on the pace you're going. But tell us a little bit. You got your medical degree and some things there. You are from the you got a bachelor's in medicine and bachelor's in surgery at the University of West Indies. And you're currently at the University of West Indies in your final year for consultancy in psychiatry, correct?
Yes, sir. That is correct.
But you also register at Sandilands Rehabilitation Centre and the psychiatric clinic at the Bahamas Department of Corrections. For those who don't know, that's where the prisoners and those stay. But we don't use the word prisoners no more, right?
No.
And you're a Rotarian, an area vice president for the doctors, you're area vice president for the Bahamas Doctors Union Executive at Sandilands Rehabilitation Centre, and you're a founder of your own small business, Affordable Travel Now. But what's the name?
Yes, sir.
How you say the name again? Your business.
Affordable Travel Now.
Now, right? Okay, I got that. So as we say, welcome to Something to Think About, and we want to have this casual conversation, but a conversation that was going to be able to spur people's minds and thoughts so that they can go out and be better stewards of our society.
Yes.
Now, tell us, you first was a medical doctor, but you have a love for psychiatry. What's the difference between the different professions in terms of medicine, psychiatry, and the other professionals in that field? So we can understand where you're coming from.
So what I tell everyone is that we are holistic beings. We're not just physical health. We're not just our cardiac system, our respiratory system. We're whole beings, right? And if you want to be well, you have to have a sound mind, which is where psychiatry comes in. Okay. You have to have a healthy body, which is where internal medicine, surgery, if you are pregnant, obs and gynae would come in. Mm-hmm. You have to have an emotionally and spiritual journey as well to be whole. So that's where our ministers, our pastors, our counselors, your close friends would come in. So to be holistically whole, you do need psychiatry, you do need psychology, but you do also need the other medical specialties as well as your spiritual journey.
Right.
So We're not compartments. We're a whole being. And
All
for
blended.
you to succeed in life, to have a healthy and a fruitful life, everything has to be on one accord.
Awesome, awesome. I guess that's why we see the elite athletes and the rest talking about meditation and all kind of stuff, that nutrition and what have you that they deal with,
Yes.
so they can get the maximum.
Yes.
So you're very community minded and active. So help us to understand, why is it important to achieve these levels that you just spoke of in order to be able to serve the clients, let's call it clients for now, until you come up with a better word.
My passion for community involvement, I think you have to reach people where they're at. You
Okay.
cannot sit behind your degrees and your titles and not reach out to persons on their level and connect with them. So when I speak, although I know the medical jargon and I can turn it up and be all highfalutin, at the end of any engagement, any speaking engagement, I want individuals or persons to walk away with something that can help them on their mental health journey. So that's why I go on the ground. I've volunteered numerous places, from Hurricane Dorian. I traveled to Abaco. I traveled to Grand Bahama. I volunteered at Kendall G. Isaacs, volunteered at the Fox Hill Community Center. I volunteer at children's homes. I volunteer at private church groups, because I want the stigma of mental illness to be decreased. And I want persons to understand that you're not flawed, you're not weak. Just as you take care of your physical health, we have to take care of our mental health.
Cool. And so that brings me right on target, because, I've always been taught that the mind is a muscle. So just like myself, when I was an athlete, one time ago.
You were an athlete? I didn't know that.
Yeah. So one time ago, I used to try to hit the baseball. But, we used to get injuries, sore arm, this, that, broken, fractured, whatever it is. And they're saying the mind is a muscle. And so just as we train a muscle, we train our mind, but the mind can also get injured like a muscle when we either overtrain it or stretch it too much or the like. And so what's your view on that concept?
I agree with that concept. I think we have to be intentional in our mental wellness and our mental health journey. Stress is a very serious aspect that a lot of individuals deal with. Whether as an athlete, it's physical stress to your body, whether as children in school, because children are academically stressed, their parents have expectations of them, there's this competitive nature. It adds stress to our youth and our adolescence. In relationships, it can be very stressful as well. So yes, there can be injury to the mind, just as you as an athlete know there can be injury to the body. And we are here to partner with you to teach you how you said, exercise the mind correctly, because there are dangerous ways to exercise the mind, but there are positive and healthy ways to exercise the mind. So we talk about mindfulness therapy, which is the meditation that you touched on, which is the yoga that some persons do. Something as simple as fragrances such as the chamomile, the lavender, turning off the lights, listening to soothing music or ambient sounds, going on the beach, exercising. No,
Yeah.
not for me. But if it
No, I
works
mean
for
in terms of
you,
that hard rock,
you
acid
can do
rock,
that.
and rock and
And
roll
that,
and pump up.
oh, see, I didn't even know what it was. No.
Yeah.
No, relaxing, soothing, calming music can all be relaxing or flexing or using the brain in a more tranquil and calm way.
Cool. So when I was had the experience of going off to MD Anderson when I was being treated for cancer, they encouraged my mom for her to stay focused by playing solitaire, Sudoku, and they had puzzles all over their complex, like thousands of spaces or pieces of puzzles and stuff, and what have you. And they said that that helps relieve people and bring them into a sense of calmness and stimulate their mind so that they could not be in fear.
Right.
How does that work?
So with using puzzles, problem solving, you are, as you put it, flexing your mental muscles. It's also taking your mind away from the stressor, but you're channeling it into a positive activity. And a lot of times in our culture, not just the Bahamas, but in the Caribbean at large, when we are stressed, we channel our energies into negative activities. So we channel our energies into addictive behaviors, such as alcohol, such as marijuana, such as sex. Some people bury themselves into work. So if you channel that frustration, that stress into an intellectual activity, that's a healthy coping mechanism and a healthy coping defense mechanism. So intellectualization is actually a healthy coping defense mechanism.
Okay. Now, when I was off trying to play baseball, one of the things that the guys at you used to say was that they used to teach us that the mind, in terms of hitting the ball and stuff like that, the mind works off of three instructions, and it works off of three types of instructions. Either I am given the instructions to myself, the world or the surroundings is given instructions to my mind, or there is going to be some trauma that is causing instructions to happen to cause me to change the way I'm doing stuff like that. So how do we train our mind to be healthy? Because you just talked about it being healthy versus having, so that we don't think negative first when we respond, right?
Man, happy you're a budding psychiatrist in the making.
No, man, I just like to try and I just try to learn as I go. Yeah.
So what you touched on just now is literally a psychotherapeutic technique that you're speaking of. And it's just a fancy word to talk about a type of therapy. And that therapy that you are speaking of is cognitive therapy. And cognitive means your mind, your thoughts. So from we are little babies, we have experiences with our parents, with our relatives, right? And through those experiences and interacting with the world, we develop something called core beliefs or cognitive schemata. And you perfectly said it. You hit the nail on the head. That was very impressive.
I wish I could hit the baseball like that.
You have your view of yourself, the view of the world, and the view of the future. And we all have that. And if those views and those early childhood experiences are negative, we develop automatic negative thoughts. And it's literally a theory or a phenomena in psychiatry where persons through early childhood experiences develop automatic negative thoughts. And those thoughts transcend to themselves, to their community in the world, and to their future. And when persons have these automatic negative thoughts, they're not resilient. They have poor coping skills. They may sometimes develop depression. They feel helpless all the time because no one loves me. I'm not worthy. I will never amount to anything. My future is dim and not looking positive. And there are ways to break that cycle. And there are different training techniques to break that cycle. So if anyone is listening and they feel that way all the time, that I'm not worthy, no one loves me, nothing is ever going to go well for me, we can teach you cognitive training to break those negative thoughts.
Cool. So this thought that people keep perpetuating, that, oh, somebody from the inner city or this or that, that they, they're only a product of their environment. How true is that? Or is it that the person like Dr. Carson, Ben Carson, whose story says that even though he grew up in the projects, that his mom insisted that he inject all his reading and whatever else, and so that could he achieve? What's the thought process on that?
So speaking from a medical perspective, there is some truth to it, but it's not the be all and end all of your life. So we are products of our environment. So we have this nature theory versus the nurture theory. So we're genetically born or given DNA. So that's what it is. That's our family genetics. And then there's the nurture. So depending on the love your parents give or your grandparents gave, your social groups, your extracurricular activities, surrounding yourself with like-minded individuals, exposing yourself to better, that is the nurture component. And if you engage in those activities, if you expose yourself to a different lifestyle, to different people, to different ways of thinking, you can be in that 1 or that 5% that made it out. So being born over the hill, being born disenfranchised is not the end and be all of your story. It's the choices and the grooming of your mind that you make.
Cool. Yeah, and we have a number of stories of people who do achieve high
I am
heights.
one of them.
Okay.
I am one
So
of
maybe.
them.
So what inspired you to change your mindset, or to change the mindset that the environment was training you to be?
So my parents are working class individuals. My dad is a teacher. My mom was a banker. My father was college educated. My mother was not.
Okay.
They made a working class salary, but they loved us. They wanted the best for us. So we joined different extracurricular activities, different civic groups, and we interacted with people who were just as intelligent as we were. So when you are exposed to that, okay, this person is doing that, I'm just as smart. I have to work harder because I am not blessed, or my family wasn't blessed with the finances, but I have the will, I have the intelligence, and I can do this. And through that resilience, I'm the first doctor in my family. I didn't come from a family lined with physicians, and I was nepotized into this profession. it was grit and determination, and my
Mm-hmm.
parents investing the little that they had to give me a better future.
Mm-hmm.
My grandmother, she was a straw vendor. On my maternal side. On my paternal side, my grandparents owned a convenience store, right? I'm
Mm-hmm.
not this silver
Silver spoon
spoon
person.
cookie
Mm-hmm.
cut person.
Mm-hmm.
And I have carved a way for my family's story to be different.
Right.
I am showing my siblings that once you put your mind to anything, you can achieve it.
Right. Right.
So it's not just growing up over the hill. It's surrounding yourself with like-minded individuals, getting involved in positive activities, positive people, having good mentorship.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So when we normally talk about mental health, though, the first thing comes off the mind that people say, "Man, he crazy or she crazy or this crazy or whatever." And I use the example of the mind being a muscle, because there's a spectrum of injury as, and I may be using the wrong word for the profession, but I'm just using it from a baseball athletic point of view, that the injury could be as severe as like what Clay Thompson had, where he had two major things that disabled him for almost 2.5 years, right? And then you have, which was treatable. Then you have those who just can't come back. That's the highest level, I'm assuming, of injury. And then you have the mild ones where somebody just get a bruise and so forth. Does the profession standardize what are the different levels, or is it on a one-on-one basis by doctor?
Each person's journey, each person's tolerance, each person's mental fortitude is different. No patient is the same, whether it's hypertension, diabetes, it's not the same. So you have to formulate or put your plan in place to attend to that individual's needs. So it's a case by case basis, and it's not only for mental health or needing therapy. Even in medicine, it's a case by case basis. Now, you do have research to support the overall well or best outcome or best approach to the situation, but you do need to take those specifics for each individual into account.
Okay, cool. So if we look at the athlete again, then somebody like myself now, who would be way less healthy than what I was when I was a 23-year-old at the peak of my training and levels, so forth, actually, So when we look at that and we look at what is now, what does the profession define as healthy or a healthy mind kind of thing? How do you define it? What is it called? A healthy mind, a healthy mental state? What?
Yes. So a healthy mental state, according to the WHO, is a state of well-being in which an individual realizes his or her abilities. They can cope with normal stresses of life. They can productively work, and they are able to contribute to his or her community. So that's the World Health Organization definition of mental health.
Cool. So if we have that, then everything else would be considered, I guess, less healthy or injured, or however you want to say it. So
yes,
there are tolerable levels of injury. I played with any number of injuries and what have you. Sometimes I couldn't even lift my arm, but I got to throw the ball from third base all the way to first base, and you still make the adjustments and compromise and so forth. I'm thinking the same thing happens with a mental point of view. we might not know that we have an injury, and the injury might not be anything that needs clinical treatment or anything like, when I say clinic, I mean I say clinic, when you have to be put in a hospital or something like that. But it's something that people could need therapy for, what have you, and they still function in the day-to-day thing, but they might not be functioning at the optimal level of performance that they could be.
Yeah.
How do you go about assessing that or identifying those type of persons in society?
I think as Bahamians, as the Caribbean in large, we have to start from the primary school level. We have to teach children about burnout, teach them about stress, teach them about signs to look for in their body that shows that they're not well. Because sometimes when you are mentally unwell, it can turn into physical symptoms. So if you're an individual who never used to have headaches and you're having headaches all the time, you're someone who always slept soundly and now you're having difficulty sleeping, or you realize that you're being withdrawn and you're not enjoying engaging with your friends when that's not your personality. Some persons may have back pain, chronic pain. They go for physical checkups. Nothing's wrong, right? Our body tells us something is wrong. But as laymen or as non-clinicians or in the medical profession, you may think you just need to go to the doctor for a checkup because this is going on. So if we begin at the primary school level to teach signs and symptoms to look for when your emotional state or your mental state is unwell, we become informed adults, right? And I think that's where we need to start. I think we need to start with the primary school education so that as we grow up, we realize, you know what? This isn't a physical health thing. I think I need to get checked out because something is wrong and it's not physical health.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome. So folks, watching something to think about with Dale Happy Notes, and we have Dr. Petra Forbes. And you can see this is a bright young lady, not just the color of her dress and all that kind of stuff. A lot of things going on, and we're going to try and move this country forward and where everybody who is within the reach of her voice so that we could maximize our potential. So when we look at the 242 now, and I guess it might mirror through the Caribbean as a whole, but when we look at that scale, if we call it maybe 4 or 5 different segments. One is the total healthy person, one is somebody who's disabled, totally mentally I'm talking about, and then ones who have tolerable injuries and so forth. How would we put a percentage, if we could, on the 242 in terms of what would we say is less than 1% of people have extreme mental challenges? Those who have tolerable might be 20%. I don't know. Do we measure those type of things?
So yes, those things can be measured, and the only way for it to be measured is through research, right? Because growing up in school, when we have projects to do, we go on Wikipedia or we go online and we quote all of these percentages. So to get an accurate account of how physically healthy or even mentally healthy the Bahamas is, we have to encourage our young people to do research.
Okay.
But in to answer your question even further, we do have statistics on suicide in our country. That's black and white facts. No one can run from it. And with suicide, a lot of times it's associated with either depression It's associated with substance use, and alcohol is a substance, guys. I know we don't classify it as one, but
And somebody told me
alcohol,
women are a substance too for men. Yeah.
yeah, so alcohol is a substance. So we do have black and white hard facts that I'm going to share about suicide in the Bahamas. But
Okay.
if we look at those numbers, we can make inferences. So these persons were in so much emotional pain and emotional hurt, they did not want to be here anymore. And what is associated with that? Depression is associated with that. Alcohol and substance use is associated with that. You also have persons.
And so just to be clear for people now, when you say substance use, you're talking about all the narcotics and stuff like that, right?
I'm talking about, yes. I'm talking about alcohol. I'm talking about weed or marijuana, whatever you want to call it. I'm talking about crack, cocaine. I'm talking about vaping substances as well. I'm talking about heroin use, all of it.
All right. Okay. Yeah, go on. All right.
Yeah. So when we look at the suicide figures for the Bahamas in 2020, and we know the pandemic was already here, we had a 38% increase in suicide.
During the pandemic?
In 2020, yes.
Oh, 2020.
So the pandemic started in 2019, right?
Right.
So in 2020, when we did our calculations, there was a 38% increase in suicide in this country. And that's pretty serious.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Very serious. And like I said, you can make certain inferences. With suicide comes depression. With suicide comes the substance use as well. Right? So those numbers most likely increased as well.
Yeah, I had a friend who told me that during the lockdowns, the purchase of alcohol actually increased. I don't know how true that is, but
I believe it.
It appeared to be to them. Yeah.
I believe it.
Cool. Okay, so when we look at those things now, then, so and we talk about the healthy mind and the percentages and the like. So if we look at the healthy mind, would we consider that to be about 50%? I know it's just guesstimate because I don't know. I believe that we really should have in our school system every year, just like we have a medical exam have to be taken and to get to school, that there should be a mental exam. I've been saying that for about almost 20 or 25 years now. I don't know if anybody's listening to me or anybody, but I think people
Please,
in
I
your
hope
bracket.
someone on here who can make policy changes is listening. I agree with you 1,000%. Jack, you cannot separate the body from the mind. If your mind fails, you cannot take care of your body. You cannot do anything. So why is it in 2022 about to be 2023, we make it mandatory for physical exams for primary, secondary school for entering certain jobs, but it's not mandatory for a mental health check? Both should occur in any instance. If you're requiring a physical exam, you should also require a mental health exam. I agree 1,000%. And that's how you catch things early. That's how you stop the suicide. That's how you stop the abuse or things from festering when you do it like an annual physical. I wholeheartedly agree with that.
Awesome. Well, we're gonna take a short break now, but when we come back, we're gonna talk a little bit because I feel that, or at least I was told that if we did these tests, then we would be able to identify some of the persons, like even the issue of autism. I don't know how that's classified. You could define that when we come back, but I was told that the autistic child actually are the ones who create all of the the brilliant innovations and stuff around the world. They have a higher percentage for their community of being brilliant people, but I don't know if we identify those. So, Madam Producer, we'll be right back.
Sammy's Chicken. There's nothing like it.
When you're looking for clothing, you can shop from store to store. But when you need gowns and tuxedos for weddings, proms, or any black tie event, there's only one name to remember. Buttons Bridal and Formal Wear since 1986. Enjoy gowns and tuxedos for any budget. We'll see you at Buttons Showroom in Cable Beach, Nassau, or visit buttonsformalwear.com. Nobody does formal wear like Buttons.
It was the night before Christmas as Santa's elves gazed through the window. They spotted Taste the Flavor ice cream sitting there waiting for them. So they sprang into action, making their way through the house, of course causing mischief along the way, even opening the refrigerator to make an all-new flavor for all the land. Toffee Nut. From peppermint to gingerbread, from red velvet to eggnog. These and a lot more irresistible flavors are available at Taste the Flavor Ice Cream this Christmas. Taste the Flavor Ice Cream, local Bahamian homemade ice cream. Promotion ends January 2nd.
Welcome back to Something to Think About with Dale Happy Knowles. We're here this evening speaking with Dr. Petra Forbes, and we're talking about how to perceive behavior is hampering our potential, the mental stresses of life. Welcome back, Doc.
I'm here with you.
Okay, awesome. So, there's a question, and folks, you're quite welcome to ask all the questions that you want online, and we'll endeavor to answer them. At least Doc will endeavor to answer, not me. I'm not the professional here. But when we look at it and we say, is it fair to say that we tend to mix up the mild injuries with people healthily acting out? Is that a challenge in our society? Where people would say, oh, they're just acting out. There's nothing wrong with them, blah, blah, blah. But there might be actually something, as you spoke just before the break, that might be driving something to a bigger threat or stress.
Due to a lack of testing, like we mentioned, in the primary school, when we enter the workplace, it's just the physical that needs to be done.
Okay.
We have a lot of individuals who are undiagnosed or completely underdiagnosed and missed. And in our community, we have family members, we have friends who we all say is acting out or a bit different. and we can easily identify them, and we're not even the clinical professionals, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, those individuals in a good amount of cases may have a diagnosable mental disorder,
Right. Mm-hmm.
because
Disorder.
we know what is the societal norms, and we know what is abnormal. And if a layperson or a person who's not in the mental health field can identify that, I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure that there is some underlying diagnosis there. And we all know those individuals. We do.
Yeah. So, on that same note though, you talk about it in the school, so just, I guess we're not even close to this, but we having the test to diagnose people from year to year, and to have that benchmark, which is important. But
Yes.
we also I talked on the autistic child,
Yeah.
and it said to me that that's the children who most of the brilliant ideas and the innovation and stuff comes from. I don't know if that's seen in your profession as something that is realized there, or that's just some tech buffs saying that.
No, it is true. So
Mhm.
with autism spectrum disorder, um, these children have challenges with social interaction. They have challenges with communication, and their behaviors are really restricted, and it's very repetitive. Sometimes they may be aggressive and irritable as well. But
Mhm.
you do have a small percentage of individuals with autism who we call savants,
Okay.
right? And they're straight out geniuses
Wow.
in
Mhm.
certain areas. So you
Mhm.
will have the mathematical savants, where you give them any random equation to work out off of the top of their head, and they always get the answer correct. I was
Mhm.
watching on TV, you had a date or a calendar savant, where you would say which day of the week was August 12th, 1940.
Right.
And the person every time would get the right date of the
Mhm.
week. And I'm like, how, like, you look at that and you're in awe, because it's like, how is that possible for someone to be so brilliant in a certain area, but they're not able to function as
Right.
you would
Mhm.
expect them to for their age, right? You have musical savants, right? Who they're just gifted. They've never attended any training or any musical lessons or classes, and they
Mhm.
can pick up almost any instrument and play like a Beethoven or someone or Mozart. So it does
Right.
exist, and there is a small percentage, and they're called savants.
Savants. Okay. I gotta remember that one. And then there's also the percentage that might be bigger, because I know I have, well, autistic wise, I know of one child well, man now, but he creates puzzles that is in the multiple of thousands of pieces, like these things almost 16 by 8 or whatever, and could do all that in very rapid time. I think he's even have a world record, a Guinness Book record for one of the, or a couple of them. But there's also those who we have going through schools that we identify as being, I guess, disruptive or bad boys and girls. But there's those who might be disruptive who are actually beyond their class, but the teachers automatically put them in the as being, I guess, remedial, or that's the word I should use, remedial. Let me know if you said the word.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have a system of identifying those and also putting them in a schooling system that can cater to their strengths, those brilliant things that they have in their head?
So I want to add on ADHD, or
Okay.
attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder.
Mm-hmm.
So, like you said, you have these children in the classroom. They're disruptive, they're fidgety, they're not socially interacting as the teacher would expect them to. They're not communicating as you would expect them to. But when you focus on their strengths or their talents, they're brilliant,
Right.
right? And we need more testing, and we need to
Mm.
be more sensitive to all disorders. So if a child sat the entrance exam, because I think that's, as far as I know, the standard, an entrance exam for whatever school it may be, it's testing for our intellectual intelligence,
Right.
in math, arithmetic, what science, whatever it may be, but it's not testing different types of intelligence,
Right.
right? And in actuality, we have 7 different types of intelligence, right? So the way our schools, and it's not a knock on them because that's the
What they
Western
inherited. Mm-hmm.
hemisphere school system, right? I
Mm-hmm.
think we have 2 main types of school systems. I'm not sure of the names right now, but it focuses on intellectual intelligence. But
Mm-hmm.
there are actually 7 different types of intelligences. And if we're not focusing on them, if you don't use it, you lose it. And we're
Right.
not
Right.
fostering those in our children and who grow up to be adults.
Right.
And they may feel inadequate. They may have low self-esteem. They may become bad boys because, I don't get this math and English, so I'm going to be the class clown. I'm going to be the cool kid.
Right.
When they
Mm-hmm.
may be brilliant in their own right. But we don't have classes, or we don't focus on the other types of intelligence.
Yeah. Well, that's serious. There's 7 types. I gotta research some of that and go at my Minister of Education and those in all those spaces to at least see if we could get a little bit a wider scope, because I know our educational system doesn't really cater. We've had on the other day on Kusura. I don't know if you know. And what are you saying is that what our system match today is for a different set of training. It doesn't match our current set of students, etc. to match that. So we have this question here from Lauren McDonald that says, is parental consent required for a teenager to see a mental health professional?
Listen, excellent. Y'all touching on all of my soft spots. Excellent question. Thank you for that. As it currently is in the Bahamas and our medical and our mental health rules, you have to be 18 or older to seek medical treatment, right? And not to stir the pots. And we're
To
not
seek
going to
medical
go,
treatment?
yeah, or mental health
Okay.
treatment. You have to be 18 or
Okay.
older.
Mm-hmm.
And I was saying not to stir the pots or get anyone upset, but
Stir it up.
our age for consent for sexual intercourse is 16, as far as I know, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if this 16 or 17-year-old gets pregnant, she can't go by herself to see an OBGYN because she needs an adult there with her.
Wow.
Right?
That put more stress on her.
Right, like, you know what I mean? So she can't make medical decisions for her baby once she has the baby, because she's still not 18, right? But I'm happy to say that with the changes in the proposed mental health act that it's now being discussed I don't know if you were following it, but it's
Yeah, I don't have all
actively
the details on it. I need to catch up on some of my laws that's been passing, but they seem to go on at a rate faster
very
than me right
fast,
now.
right? But it's actively being discussed, and I applaud, not being political, but it's passing under this current administration. I applaud some of the changes that are being made. And one of those changes, which is Lauren's question, if it passes,
Mm-hmm.
adolescents between the ages of 14 to 17 will be able independently to seek mental health care. And I
Awesome.
think that is so, so important, because I know you and I would have discussed in the West, in the Caribbean region,
Mm-hmm.
you have the highest incidence of sexual abuse or violence
Wow.
against women.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are a 14 to 17-year-old who is being molested or sexually abused, and you're
Mm-hmm.
going to have trauma, you're going to
Right.
have depression, you're going to look at your body and not like it, and possibly have eating disorders. You know what I mean? Like,
Yep. Mm-hmm.
it's vital that they get mental health care so that the trauma doesn't transcend
Commemorate,
into
right.
adulthood, and then they
Mm-hmm.
become dysfunctional adults or alcoholics or have negative feelings about themselves or even contemplate suicide.
Right.
So
Mm-hmm.
that is one of the changes that I wholeheartedly approve of. We have to allow victims, regardless of age, and they're saying 14 to 17 now, which
Mm-hmm.
is a start, to get the help that they need.
Yeah.
So currently, no, if you are a minor, you cannot.
Mm-hmm.
But under the new Mental Health Act, they are making provisions for 14 to 17-year-olds to seek care without adult
That does.
supervision.
Right. Right.
And
Mm-hmm.
I wholeheartedly support it.
Yes. And so what other things within this new legislation is going to be beneficial? What are some of the highlights?
Okay.
We don't have to go talk about all, but just some of the critical ones. Yeah.
So some other highlights, it's going to be a more humanistic approach. So the language in the Mental Health Act is very degrading.
Mm-hmm.
It's very stigmatizing, and we need to be done with it.
Right.
They're
Okay.
humans, they're individuals, so they refer to them as individuals and no longer as patients. For
Mm-hmm.
persons who are having legal challenges, they refer to them as the accused and not inmates.
Right.
Another change that is going to occur, or they're trying to pass, is that elderly persons, not even just mentally ill, elderly persons, as they age, they have decline in their memory.
Right.
A lot of persons don't make wills.
Mm-hmm.
So when they pass away or when medical decisions need to be made for them, automatically it's the next of kin.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes your next of kin may not have your best interest at heart.
Right. 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 Mm-hmm.
So while the elderly or the mentally diagnosed are in their right frame of mind or cognition, they're trying to make provision for them to nominate their person who they want to represent them when they are no longer able to. And
Right.
I wholeheartedly support that as well.
Awesome.
You have too many sad stories where persons are just taken advantage of. So while you have a mental illness or while you're aging, once your physician does the correct testing and says that you are in your right frame of mind, You can nominate your person who you want to represent you when you can no longer do that for yourself.
Right.
So that's another huge change that they're trying to make. They're also trying to make mental health and physical health equitable in terms of access to care, funding, that things are paid for. It should not be any discrepancies or disparities between what is allocated for physical health versus what is allocated for mental health.
Okay.
So it's just trying to be more humanistic and looking at things from the victims or the patient's perspective.
Right. So all of these things have a significant impact on one's attitude, right? I mean, John C. Maxwell said an attitude is the outward expression of an inward feeling. So if everybody is having all of these issues that they're being stressed on and so forth, then they're going to have their outward expression.
They're going
which
to
we call
act out.
attitude.
They're going to act out.
Right.
They may
And so then
stop.
when they act out, they don't be as productive.
Yes.
And if they're not productive, society not going to be productive, and then our economy is not going to grow, and I'm never going to get my $100 billion economy that I know we could get, right?
Exactly.
But we know it's coming. So tell us some of the critical or the big ticket items that we're experiencing in the Bahamas. You already touched on stigma alone is a stress factor that if somebody might be a little off upstairs, or somebody think they're a little off, that the stigma of it will cause them not to even want to seek out help and the like. And so what about the other stresses, or what is, you talk about sexual abuses, what about the family islands and children, bullying in schools? Is that still an issue?
It is a big issue in schools. Currently, we have...
And how does it impact the person? Yeah.
So in terms of bullying in the schools is huge. And the fallout or the impact from it is usually cutting. It's used, when I say cutting, self-mutilating behavior, where they're not trying to kill themselves, but because they have so much emotional pain, cutting provides physical pain. So when you have physical pain, your mind focuses on the physical pain, so you don't focus on the emotional pain anymore. So
that's like
when
people
kids
who
have a
drink
lot of...
for substitute. That's like people who drink to substitute for...
Yes.
That. Okay.
So because of bullying, cutting has increased. Suicidal thoughts have increased. Depression has increased as well in our children. And I've seen this firsthand. I'm not talking any international data. I worked at the Community Counseling Center, which is on Collins Avenue, and we get we get almost all of the referrals from the public schools, from their guidance counselors. And in my less than 1 year there, I would say 40% of our clinic's population is children and adolescents. And that is terrifying.
I could believe that.
Terrifying. And they're not pretending, and they don't just want attention. They have serious diagnosable mental health issues that need to be addressed.
Right.
And 40% is too much.
Yeah.
It's
20%.
too much.
I wish I could get that on my class grades. But so going back to our classroom though, identifying these persons in society who need help. Because we saw with hurricane, and I want to touch on that, the impact of the hurricane and COVID lockdowns, etc. But schools, the teachers, is there a mandatory program in place where somebody in each school has to have some level of I don't want to say formal training, well, it might be formal training, but some level of exposure from you also that they teach them how to identify people who have
Listen,
a challenge.
Humpy, I really hope someone is on this live who
Don't worry, I
can
can send it to some people. Make sure they watch it.
implement policy changes, because you are bringing up so many much needed and excellent points.
Thank you.
Okay, so no, it's not mandatory.
Oh, wow.
That's the first thing. But yes, there is something available for teachers, not just guidance counselors, but all teachers, to be trained in identifying and picking up mental health issues in their students. And that program is called the MH Gap. And
MH gap.
it speaks for itself. M is mental, H is health, and gap is when you have a big, wide hole in between what is now and what is ideal. So there is a big gap in between what we have and what is ideal. And to help fill that void or that hole, we train laypersons to identify mental health red flags. And they're not the psychiatrists, they're not the psychologists. Their role is to identify problem children or problem people and then refer them for further help. And I think, again, the school system, primary, secondary, if we have healthy children, we will have healthy adults. So if we make it mandatory for teachers to participate in the MH gap, then we will pick up more problematic issues. And then those children can be referred and they can get the help that they need. So no, it's not mandatory. It should be. And yes, there is something available. And if they have the funding, if they have persons who are passionate about reaching these children, I'm available. We can make a difference in this country. We can make a real difference in this country.
Awesome.
Sorry, I just get so...
No, this is good.
So passionate, and like, it's like small changes that can be made that can turn this country around. We talk about crime. We talk about these senseless killings. Every year, the murder rate rises and rises. Why isn't anger management a mandatory course in high schools?
Right. Well,
simple things. Why don't we teach how coping management or coping skills changes in these high schools? I can't execute or show coping skills or show anger management skills if I was never taught it.
Right.
If I come from a violent neighborhood or hostile home, when am I going to be exposed to these things if it's not at school?
Right.
And it's simple fixes. It's just an added course in the curriculum. It's just making the MH gap mandatory for teachers. And we can have a huge difference in crime. We can reduce the amount of young men that we're losing to the criminal justice system if we just expose them to these things in school.
Awesome. So, I'm looking up here at the clock, just take a clip up and I see what time it is. And so, Madam Producer put mouth on the show today, and she said this is going to have to be a two show series at least, because we still got to talk about the hurricane, we got to talk about the lockdowns, we got to talk about the nutrition, we got to talk about we already talked about pregnancy a little bit, but I mean, there's a number of things that all goes into play in this whole big picture as to how we're going to change our attitude. And once we change our attitude, our whole narrative is going to change and so forth. So we have to bring you back. Hopefully you will have time that we could possibly do it before the year is out. If not, we'll do it early in the year your schedule permits, because I see, based on your resume, I don't know when you find time to do whatever you do for yourself. But what I want to say before we go, so is there anything that you would like to say to the general public? Because I asked you a lot of questions. Yeah.
I would like to leave with, again, stressing that we need to stop looking at mental health or mental illness and physical health and physical illness as two separate entities. It is not. We are one body, and we need a healthy mind, a healthy body, and a healthy spirit. If you have a broken foot, if you have hypertension or diabetes, you go to professionals to assist you. Mental health and mental illness it should not be looked at differently. If you have something that is off, if you're not functioning, just as you would go to your orthopedic doctor or your family medicine doctor, come to us. We're not going to have your business all over the place. We will lose our licenses. The main thing is partnering with you to make you a holistically healthy individual. And I'll leave the numbers with Happy. We have not enough, but we do have some resources that you can use. We have our community counseling center. We have the Bahamas Crisis Center. We have people helping people. If your family is acutely ill and you feel that they're a danger to themselves or others, accident emergency for emergencies is open 24 hours. There is always 24 hours. There's a psychiatrist available to assess your loved one. So there's a suicide prevention hotline as well. So there are resources that you can use.
Awesome. Well, we'd like to thank you, Doc, for taking the time to be with us. We hope you will have a blessed Christmas as the season grows bigger. You get to Junkanoo. I'm sure I'm going to see you out there.
Valley boys.
No Valley, not another Valley one. Oh, come on. Anyway, we're going to beat up on all you. Yeah. But yes, but truly appreciate the conversation and look forward to us extending it to dwell into some of these things, because there are some things that is happening in our society. When the man or the woman in the car 10 cars back, and the light is just about to turn green now. I've always seen where the light is turning green and they blowing the horn. But now the light hasn't even turned green yet. And they're blowing the horn, like not just toot to remind you in case you fall asleep on the wheel, but they whatever, and they hitting gas at the same time. So if you don't move, you get mashed.
That is not normal.
It can't be, right?
It's not normal.
Yeah, so we want to deep into some of these current things that is happening, so we could see how we could identify what we need to do in order to alleviate some of these challenges. So thank you once again, Madam Producer. Thank you, everybody out there on social media. Do be safe and use your talents.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
Enjoyed the show? Then subscribe to us for more educational and inspirational content. Ring the bell so you never miss a show. Let's change the narrative, 242.